You were right. I have listened to your requests, and you were right. You all said, play this game. It was awesome. It's one of the better systems out there, and you were right. So here we go. Let's jump in. We're playing Savage Worlds. Hey nerds, welcome. My name is Atlas and I really like role-playing games. On this channel, I talk about tabletop role-playing games that are alternatives to Dungeons & Dragons. One of those games is the setting-agnostic system of Savage Worlds, designed by Shane Lacey Hensley and Clint Black, first published in 2003. You know me, I love telling my own story, and I love a system that allows me to do that. And when I tell you that Savage Worlds is the perfect game for that, I'm not kidding. I bow to your wisdom. You were not kidding when you all told me to pick up this book. It's phenomenal. You can play every type of game, from zombie horror to pulpy western to modern university and epic fantasy and everywhere in between. And for those of you who like to try your hand at writing, Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild is a group of talented writers who write content for Savage Worlds that can be found on Drive-Thru-RPG. Savage Worlds is a rules-light, setting-agnostic system that prioritizes speed of play and sandbox design as opposed to hyper-detailed rules and overdone realism. It's a game where you can be virtually any kind of character in any kind of setting. Zombie apocalypse, superhero high school, Old West, modern world, you can do it all in Savage Worlds. And if you can't do it with the rulebook, there are tons of supplements, errata, and crossovers to make pretty much any world come to life. And speaking of crossovers, you know what they have? Pathfinder! I am a slut for Paizo, and I am not sorry about it. Since I've never played Savage Worlds before, I wanted to try my hand at it a few times, so I set up a character sheet and read my way through the rulebook to kind of get a feel for how everything works. This was able to help me understand how to properly make a character, as well as deep diving into the gameplay. We'll get to my character later, but for right now, let's focus on how to play the game and how it stacks up to other games on the market. How Savage Worlds is different. It's a toolkit versus a traditional system. So Savage Worlds, from my understanding, is less of a role-play system and more of a toolkit to build your own system. Yes, they have fully fleshed out games and settings within the system, but really the book gives you options for everything to build your own game. It's not a standard system in the traditional sense. They literally wrote this book and was like, you can make your own game, here's how. There are plenty of systems out there that do one thing really well, and then there are systems that are more of a jack-of-all-trades kind of system. Savage Worlds is one of those systems. It's a lot like GURPS is another great example. GURPS is another great example of a jack-of-all-trades, setting-agnostic system where you can kind of build your own game from the ground up. Now, just because Savage Worlds is an all-around system does not mean that they don't do a banger job in any scenario. The main book, which is the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are also companion books that you can get that take a deeper dive into specific kinds of settings. There's companion books for horror, superpowers, fantasy, and sci-fi, so you can create your own world. And if that's not really your type of thing, there are plenty of pre-written adventure paths, one-shots, and more. They call their pre-designed game Savage Settings, and those are designed to be able to pick up the game and go. No prior experience needed. There are two kinds of Savage settings: adventures called Savage Tales and Plot Point campaigns. Plot Point campaigns are an overarching backstory of the campaign world, and Savage Tales, which are individual adventures that can take up a session or two to multiple chapters designed to play over months or even years at a time. If homebrew is what you prefer, well, you hit the jackpot. Savage Worlds is a fantastic toolkit to help you be able to create your own world within the setting and whatever kind of shtick it has. You want to be time-traveling superheroes that can fight zombies in the Old West? They have that. You want to be space pirates fighting intergalactic mecha machines? They have that too. A little bit of a controversial opinion, but bear with me. The biggest difference between Savage Worlds and Dungeons & Dragons, in my opinion, is that D&D is an incredibly easy game. Hold on, let me cook. D&D was specifically designed to be easy to get into for brand new players. It's easy to play, it's easy to run, It's also easy to flub and fudge and railroad and everything else. Savage Worlds is a little more technically complicated. There are more mechanics than there are with D&D, at least in a specific kind of sense. But the good part is that these mechanics usually make for a much better storytelling experience. That's not to say that you can't have a good storytelling experience with D&D. You absolutely can. That's the whole point of the game. But with Savage Worlds, when you throw in the dice, the cards, the wild dice, the benefits, the hindrances, etc., it makes for a better gameplay experience than... Hey there, Editing Atlas here. Sorry for the jump scare. I need to kind of explain myself here. I kind of go on a rant for a little bit in this next section that I'm just going to omit entirely. I think I need to explain myself when I started talking about how Savage Worlds and D&D were different and that Savage Worlds was a better gameplay experience. That's not entirely what I meant. I mostly just meant to say that Savage Worlds, while the mechanics of Savage Worlds is technically more complicated than something like D&D, because D&D is very simple. You roll a dice, you hit your number. It's the same thing in Savage Worlds. You roll a dice to try to hit a number, but it's more immediately intimidating at the forefront, which makes it seem more complicated. It's really not. And both games have a good amount of roleplay and gameplay and everything else. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, moving on. So let's get into the dice system and the card system. The dice system in Savage Worlds is not like your traditional D20 system. While it still uses the polyhedral dice system, you use specific dice for specific trait rolls, instead of just rolling a D20 and adding whatever your trait number is to it. For example, all of your traits start out at a D4. That's this one. Then you start to build up your skills as you flesh out your character. My character, Penelope, is an avian, which means she has wings and a bonus to her notice skill. So instead of starting with a D4, I start out with a D6 in the notice category and go up from there, depending on where I choose to put my points. These dice can go up to a D12 unless the rulebook or your ancestry specifically decides otherwise. And then you start adding attribute increases once your dice are maxed. Otherwise, the rules are pretty much just like other games. Roll it, add it, own it. The card system is a little different. Savage Worlds uses a standard deck of playing cards with the jokers still left in. This is what you will use for your initiative tracker, as well as keeping gameplay moving quickly and steadily so that things don't get stagnant. At the beginning of the round, the GM will deal a new hand of cards, and the players act in turn as the cards are dealt from ace down to a 2, with suits being the tiebreaker. If someone draws a joker card, all players receive a benny, which is short for benefit. More on that later. Other than in combat, the cards don't really play too much of a part unless it's a specialty deck, which will sometimes have various encounters and such to keep the gameplay moving and exciting. So now let's get into the character building part of the game. Ancestries, like in many other games, are also known as races. These are the type of species that your character is. In Savage Worlds, there are 10 primary iconic ancestries. These are the ones you see pretty commonly across the board. Humans, elves, dwarves. But there are also a few iconic ancestries specific to this game. And the cool thing about Savage Worlds is that if you don't like what they've given you, just make your own. There are tables upon tables to be able to make your own thing and to tweak what's already given to you. Say you want to be an aquatic character, so you take the Aquarian ancestry, but you want to have more traditional tails, bioluminescence, and blindness from being deep underwater for so long. There's stats for that. Maybe you like the Rakashans, which are big humanoid cats with sharp claws and teeth. But maybe in your world, they also have wings. Maybe in your world, humans have become so evolved that they're immune from diseases and have horns. Who knows? It's your world, you tell me. Now, here's where I need to crash out for like 8 seconds. Savage Worlds is yet another setting where there are cat people, but no dog people. Why is that? There are so many games that have no problem anthropomorphizing a big-ass cat, but they won't do that to canines? Hello? I know we're getting into furry territory here, but I don't care. If there are big cheetah and tiger people, there should also be big wolf and fox people too, damn it. I'm sorry. I have opinions. So anyway, in Savage Worlds, you can take up to 4 points of hindrances. Hindrances are flaws, drawbacks, quirks, or dark secrets that are taken from your backstory. There are major and minor hindrances. Major ones are worth 2 points and minor ones are worth 1 point. There are pros and cons to having a hindrance or two. The drawback is that it's a handicap of sorts. Major hindrances can include an ability deficit, like blindness, deafness, or a missing limb. Other major hindrances can be an old enemy that keeps popping up, or a thirst for blood, or maybe they're just really young and this world is scary. Minor hindrances are things like character flaws, like being timid or jealous or just plain ugly. These usually won't cause too much of a problem, but that doesn't mean that your GM can't make them relevant to the story or encounter. The pros to having hindrances is that you get boosts. So not only does your hindrance help out with roleplay, you also get good stuff out of it. For every 2 points, you can raise an attribute 1 die type, or you can choose an edge. For every 1 hindrance point, you can gain another skill point or make more starting money. Hindrances are a great way to get into character and make decisions based on your own abilities. For example, my character Penelope, she's deaf, so she gets an automatic failure on any perception checks that rely on sound. But because of this, she also gets alertness and can see ridiculously far. So she gets a good bonus to perception checks that rely on sight. Because I know this, I will not only be able to roleplay using sign language, but also I know my character's limits. And I'll be able to use those limits to my advantage. Say you have to go into a crowded nightclub where you can't hear anything because the music's so loud and disorienting, thus confusing the team. It's no problem for me. I can't hear it anyway. Your attributes and your skills are combined to form your traits. Your traits are ranked by die type, going from a D4 to a D12. A D6 is considered average for a human, but the higher the better. Attributes are passive or innate abilities that are used for resisting effects, such as fear or supernatural attacks. They don't directly affect your skills, but they open up options to edges or faster skill increases. The 5 attributes are agility. This is your nimbleness and your dexterity. Your smarts, which is your raw intelligence, how fast you think on your feet. Spirit, this is your willpower. Strength, this is your physical power. Spirit is mind, strength is body, and vigor. This is your endurance. This is your constitution and toughness. Your attributes also determine how fast your skills increase during the advancement process, which is Savage Worlds' way of leveling up. After so many advancements, your character goes up in rank. Over time, you will go from a novice to a legendary hero. And now let's get into your skills. You start with 12 points to buy skills. These are linked to specific attributes, so there are smarts skills like language, academics, or battle tactics. There are spirit skills like intimidation, focus, or performance, and there's more. All attributes start at a D4. Then you get to advance depending on your ancestry, hindrances, or with point buy. You have 5 points to increase your attribute. Skill advancement costs 1 point per die type up to the die type that is the same as the skill's linked attribute. For example, if I have a D8 to my smarts attribute and I want to advance my hacking skill from a D4 to a D8, it costs 1 point per step. So I go from a D4 to a D6, which is 1 point, up to a D8, which is another point, for a total of 2. Then if I want to increase it further, like up to a D10, it costs 2 points after the D8 per level. So if I want to max it out to a D12, it'll cost 4 total points instead of 2. Not all of your skills will you be able to max or even get as high as your attribute. And you can roll unskilled checks too. You don't have to have the skill for it, but it does make it easier. And now for your derived statistics. Your derived statistics are your pace, your parry, your size, and your toughness. Standard pace is about 6 inches. This is way more than 6 inches. I promise. 1 inch is roughly about 2 yards of real-world distance, so 6 inches is roughly about 36 in-world feet. This can change depending on your ancestry, your hindrances, or your edges. Parry,
a platypus,
is 2 plus half of your fighting skill, plus any bonuses that you may get from your weapons or your shields. Parry is also the target number that your enemies have to meet or beat in order to do damage to you. In other games, this would be your AC. Your size is usually 0, unless your ancestry, edge, or hindrance says otherwise. It cannot be less than -1, and it cannot be more than 3. Toughness is 2 plus half of your vigor. This is your damage threshold. Damage rolls that meet or beat this number will do damage to you. So even if it gets through your parry, it may not meet your damage threshold. So now that we've gone over the skills and the attributes, which are what make up the basic statistics for what make up your character, now let's get into edges. What really sets your character apart from all the other characters is your edge. You gain edges from taking hindrances or from your ancestry. These are boosts your character gets. There are the main ones in the core rulebook, and then each setting book will also have a list of edges as well to add to those choices. There are background edges, combat edges, leadership, power, professional, social, and weird edges. And then there are legendary edges on top of that. These are boosts that you will get to your rolls during certain skill checks. Sometimes it's during combat, other times it could be during a skill check. Each edge has a requirement for you to meet in order to take it. For example, if you want your character to be a wizard, well, they'll need to be a seasoned character, they have to have an arcane background, and they have to have at least a D6 to their spellcasting trait. Once you meet all of those requirements, you can choose that specific edge. And then once you're done with all of that, you can finish up your character's personality with their background information. Where do they live? Where did they grow up? Do they have close friends or family? What do they look like? All of this information really does nothing for you per se mechanics-wise, but it's good for roleplay and for your GM to have some good ties to the story. Now, I mentioned bennies before, and we're going to talk about that now. Bennies are benefits that are given out during the game and act as more boosts to your rolls. Players start each session with 3 bennies, and you either use them or you lose them. They don't carry over into the next session. These are awarded in 2 ways. By GM discretion, they can give you these bennies based on cool roleplay, clever gameplay, or an act of heroism. If you've played Pathfinder or Starfinder, these are similar to the hero point. You can also get a benny when someone at the table draws a joker during combat. When that happens, all players get one. And the cool thing is that GMs get bennies too. Now, an interesting thing about how the Savage World bennies are different from the Pathfinder hero points is that bennies are good for more than just a reroll. You can reroll a trait or a damage roll, you can draw a new action card, you can recover, you can soak damage, and more. Bennies are a great way to not only reward your players, but to incentivize good roleplay and good gameplay. So now let's get into combat. So even though it's definitely not required, Savage Worlds assumes that you are using some kind of battle mat or terrain to mark where your characters are going to go. Because of this, movement and weapon ranges are measured in inches. If you would prefer a parlor-style theater of the mind kind of approach, there is a table for that too to help with combat. If you're used to D&D and Pathfinder, the timing is the same. Each round is about 6 seconds long, equaling about 1 minute per 10 rounds of combat. In Savage Worlds, a round is an entire countdown of action cards from ace to 2. Countdown starts with numbers and then goes to suits if 2 people draw the same number or face card. If someone draws a joker, then everyone gets a benny. The person who drew the joker gets to go whenever they want, and then the deck is shuffled and then everyone draws new cards in the next round. On your turn, you get a movement and 1 action. Attacks work like most role-playing games. You have a certain number, your target number, you have to meet or beat, and if you do, your attack hits. Now, because Savage Worlds is considered a grittier game, there are a lot of mechanics to keep gameplay fast, furious, and realistic. Bullets have a range and a rate of fire. Ranged attacks take penalties the farther away the target is. And your wounds have lasting effects that you can't shake off with a good night's sleep. So what happens if things don't go well? You get wounded. You get wounded enough and you become incapacitated. Once this happens, you get 1 roll. Just 1. You critically fail that roll, you're dead. If you roll really well, you just might be able to shake it off with a good night's sleep. The dice giveth and the dice taketh away. There are a lot of situational rules for combat as well. Rules for group rolls, mounted, aerial, aquatic combat, vehicles, and all manner of rules for different scenarios in which your players might find themselves. So now that we've gone over combat, let's get into the magic system of Savage Worlds, which I think is pretty neat the way that they set this up. So something that is cool about the magic system in Savage Worlds, it's less of a spellbook style system with spell slots and the like, and more of a resource management system. You choose your background, which is where your powers come from, and your powers are flavored from there. It's super versatile, you just put a different spin on it. You can get your magic from 5 different sources. Gift, which are abilities that may not be the same as traditional magic or psionics. These can be superpowers or alien abilities. Magic, this is your raw supernatural energy. This is your typical arcane user, your mages, your cultists, your wizards. You can get your powers from miracles. These are folks who draw their power from some kind of divine force, like clerics, paladins, priests, oracles, etc. They often use rituals or prayers to invoke their magic. You have your psionics. This is the power of the mind, your telekinesis, your telepathy. Then you have your weird scientists. These are your engineers, your artificers, your scientists, your inventors and gadgeteers. They use devices to harness their power. Instead of spell slots, you have power points. It costs 1 power point to maintain a spell for its designated duration. For example, if a power can go up to 5 rounds, it costs 1 power point per 5 rounds. And you can do this as much as you have power points for. After that, you have to recharge the ability. There is a lot to the magic system. I'm barely scratching the surface here. So if you would like a further deep dive into the system and how it works, let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to make a further in-depth video in the future. When I asked my Threads followers what they wanted to see me talk about and what game that I should try next, the amount of people who suggested Savage Worlds was insane. So when I found a copy at my local game store, I knew I had to pick it up. And I'm so glad that I did. This system is awesome. I love the quirky way of doing initiative. I love the Deadland setting and the other settings that the system has to go along with it. And as I said before, there's a freaking Pathfinder crossover. I love that it's a toolkit similar to GURPS and other systems like that, in that you can build your own game however you want. You just kind of pick and choose which parts that you want to keep. It doesn't just have to be fantasy or sci-fi or horror. It can be all of those things combined and more. It contains a bestiary for monsters and big beasties. It's got a whole section of running the game for GMs. And if you go to their website, they have a lot of extra resources, and a good amount of them are free. There's an Adventurers League for people who want to write their own adventures, one-shots, and more. The only gripe that I have, and this is me like really nitpicking, is that the rulebook is laid out just a little funky. I had a little bit of trouble struggling trying to figure out certain things of the rulebook, but for the most part, once I figured out where everything was, it wasn't that hard. The system is really great, and once I got over the initial learning curve of learning how to play it, I really liked it. It is definitely, again, in my opinion, a little more complicated to grasp than D&D 5th edition, but that doesn't mean that it's hard to learn for new players. I was a completely new player who had never touched the system before doing research for this video, and I was able to figure it out and pick it up within a few hours. If you like having a toolkit to be able to create and form your own worlds and adventures, I really recommend you try out this system. And that is it for me today, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this review of Savage Worlds and that it makes your way onto your table very soon. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank you so much. I reached my first 100 subscribers, which is really awesome for me. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. If you would like to continue hanging out with me, I upload every 3rd Friday of the month. Feel free to follow me on socials. All the information on how to do that is in the description box below. And until next time, play more games. Bye, nerds. President's here and he's horny. For legal reasons, that was a joke. I smell like tea tree. Fluff it. Fluff the head. Make it pretty. The lady said buttholes, Sam.